A verse-by-verse study in the Book of Genesis, ESV, with Irv Risch, Chapter 36. What does Genesis chapter 36 mean? Genesis 36 consists of a list of Esau's offspring, focusing primarily on genealogy in the rulers of Edom, the nation that came from Esau. The chapter is inserted in Genesis between the generations of Isaac, Genesis 25 verse 19, ending with his death in the previous chapter, Genesis 35 verses 28 to 29, and the generations of Jacob, which follow Joseph's story through to the end of the book, Genesis 37 verses 1 to 2. 3 of Esau's wives are listed as the mothers of his many sons. Strangely, the names of these wives and the fathers they came from are somewhat different from those reported in Genesis 26 verse 34 and 28:9. It's possible Esau had other wives or that the names of his wives were changed. Esau took his wives from the Canaanite people of the land. Abraham had insisted that Isaac not marry a Canaanite woman. Isaac had directed Jacob to find a wife from their relatives outside of the land, as well. Esau's choice to marry these women may have contributed to his move away from the family. Esau is associated with the name Edom, due to his unique birth and an event earlier in his life, Genesis 25 verses 25 and 30. The land they come to rule also has a name with an ironic coincidence. Esau was known for being hairy, Genesis 27 verse 11, and the word, seir, literally means, shaggy, Genesis 36 verse 1. Esau's wives Adah, Oholibamah, and Basemath bore to him 5 sons, including Eliphaz, his firstborn. These sons were all born in the land of Canaan. Jacob's family was the reverse. All but one of his sons were born outside of the land before he moved back home. Esau's were born in the land before he moved his family and all that he owned away to the hill country of Seir, Genesis 36 verses 2 to 5. This territory was taken from the Horites, Genesis 14 verse 6, during a period of conquest, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12. Their choice to move away from Jacob fulfills prophecy about Esau breaking free from his brother's shadow, Genesis 27 verses 39 to 40. It is driven by economics, since there aren't enough resources for both large clans, Genesis 36 verses 6 to 8. This chapter emphasizes repeatedly that Esau is Edom. That is, the Edomite people and nation all came from him. His grandsons are listed according to their fathers, and then listed again as the chiefs or tribal leaders in the land of Edom. One of the key names in this segment is Amalek. His descendants would become vicious enemies of Israel, Exodus 17 verses 8 and 16, Deuteronomy 25 verses 17 to 19, 1 Samuel 15 verses 2 to 3. Another part of this list mentions the kings of the Horites, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12, who occupied the land, Genesis 14 verse 6, before Esau's clans took over. The text also notes that Edom had kings long before Israel. This is because Israel will spend more than 4 centuries in slavery, Exodus 12 verse 40, before an era under a series of judges, Judges 12 verse 25, rather than under a king, Genesis 36 verses 9 to 39. Finally, the chapter lists another set of the chiefs of Esau, perhaps naming the regions in Edom by the original heads of the clans who occupied each area, Genesis 36 verses 40 to 43. Over time, the nation of Edom grew hostile towards Israel, Numbers 20:14-21, 1 Samuel 14 verse 47, 2 Kings 8 verse 20. This ultimately led to Edom's participation in Israel's defeat and exile, and the judgment of God on the Edomites, Obadiah 1 verses 1 to 4, 10. Prophecy was fulfilled and the Nabateans overcame Seir and the nation of Edom was dissolved, Malachi 1 verses 2 to 5. Survivors settled in Hebron, becoming known as the Idumeans. A notable member of this group was Herod the Great, who tried to have Jesus killed as an infant, Matthew 2 verses 16 to 18. In AD 70, Idumeans tried to join the Jewish rebellion against Rome and were entirely obliterated. As a nation, and even as a distinct people group, they became extinct. Chapter context: Genesis 35 concludes with the death of Isaac. It marks the end of the story arc which focused on him, Genesis 25 verse 19. Genesis 36 briefly describes the generations of Esau, Jacob's twin brother, listing his sons, grandsons, and the kings of Edom, the nation that came from Esau. This is parallel to how Genesis 25 verses 12 to 18 relayed the fate of Ishmael, another son who did not carry the line of promise. Genesis 37 begins the generations of Jacob, focusing mostly on the story of Joseph. Verse by verse. Verse 1. These are the generations of Esau, that is, Edom. Genesis is divided into sections, using the Hebrew word toldot, literally meaning records of the generations. Each section focuses on the main descendants of a certain Old Testament figure. Earlier sections discussed the heirs of Adam, Genesis 5 verse 1, Noah, Genesis 6 verse 9, Shem, Genesis 11 verse 10, Terah, the father of Abraham, Genesis 11 verse 27, and Ishmael, Genesis 25 verse 12. The portion immediately before this gave the history of Isaac, Esau's father, and mostly focused on Esau's twin brother, Jacob, Genesis 25 verse 19. This chapter describes the generations of Esau, also identified as Edom. Edom is the name given to the nation which controlled Seir, the region Esau and his descendants occupied. They become known as the Edomites, Numbers 20:14-21, 1 Samuel 14 verse 47, 2 Kings 8 verse 20, Obadiah 1 verses 8-11. The next chapter will begin the generations of Jacob, focusing mostly on his son Joseph. Context summary: Genesis 36 verses 1-8 gives a summary of what happened to Esau, the twin brother of Jacob. Esau is called Edom, literally meaning red. This connection comes from his birth, Genesis 25 verse 25, and an incident with his brother, Genesis 25 verse 30. The land where he settles is also named for Esau's appearance. Seir literally means shaggy. The nation of Edom grows after Esau moves away from Jacob's rapidly growing family. Jacob was given the name Israel by God. Over time, the brother nations of Israelites and Edomites will become bitter enemies. The short prophetic book of Obadiah predicts harsh judgment on Edom for their treatment of Israel, Obadiah 1 verses 1-2. Verse 2. Esau took his wives from the Canaanites, Adah the daughter of Elon the Hittite, Oholibamah the daughter of Anna the daughter of Zibeon the Hivite. The record of Esau's generations begins by listing his wives, Genesis 36 verse 3. Unlike his father Isaac and his brother Jacob, Esau took wives from the local Canaanite peoples. Abraham had insisted that Isaac not marry a Canaanite woman and intermingle the covenant people of God with the idol-worshipping local populations, Genesis 24 verses 2-4. If Esau had been given this same instruction from Isaac, he didn't follow it, Genesis 27 verse 46. The first two wives, listed in this verse, are Adah and Oholibamah. Base math is listed in the following verse. Oddly, the names of these three and their fathers do not match the wives and fathers given in Genesis 26 verse 34 and 28:9. It is not clear why. Scholars suggest that perhaps Esau had 6 wives, not necessarily all at the same time, and these 3 were the most significant. It's also possible the names of his wives were changed at some point, Genesis 17 verse 5, 32 verse 38, 36:8. Verse 3. And base math, Ishmael's daughter, the sister of Nebaioth. This and the previous verse, Genesis 36 verse 2, list 3 of Esau's wives. It's possible he had more. The names and fathers of these wives do not match the description of Esau's wives given in Genesis 26 verse 34 and 28:9. For instance, Genesis 26 verse 34 cites Basemath as the daughter of Elon the Hittite. Here Basemath is described as Ishmael's daughter. Ishmael was Isaac's half-brother. The reason for these changes is unclear. Earlier references to Esau's marriages were in the context of the stress they caused his family, Genesis 26 verses 34 to 35, 27 verse 46, 28:8-9. This passage is about those children of Esau who formed the nation of Edom, in the land of Seir. Scholars suggest Esau may have had as many as 6 wives, not necessarily at the same time. The 3 listed here would have been the most significant. It's also possible the names of his wives were changed, Genesis 17 verse 5, 32 verse 28, 36:8. Verse 4. And Adah bore to Esau, Eliphaz, Basemath bore Ruel. This and the following verse, Genesis 36 verse 5, list the names of Esau's 5 sons. These are the children whose ancestors will populate the land of Seir, Genesis 36 verse 8, becoming a nation called Edom. Just as Esau is known as Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1, his twin brother Jacob is known as Israel, Genesis 35 verse 10. The brother nations, of their respective descendants, will eventually become hated enemies. The name Eliphaz means something like, the God El conquers, or perhaps, my God is Paz. Ruel means, friend of El, God, a name later used by Jacob's descendants. Verse 5. And Oholibamah bore Jush, Jalam, and Korah. These are the sons of Esau who were born to him in the land of Canaan. This and the previous verse, Genesis 36 verse 4, list the names of Esau's 5 sons. These main descendants of Esau will form a nation called Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1. Esau's twin brother, Jacob, was also given a different name, Genesis 35 verse 10 Israel. In time, Israelites and Edomites will come to hate each other, Numbers 20:14-21, 1 Samuel 14 verse 47, 2 Kings 8 verse 20, Obadiah 1 verses 8-11. The name Jush means something like, may God help. Jalam is an awkward name to translate but may refer to something like a mountain goat. Korah, also, is not clear, but may mean bald head. Verse 6. Then Esau took his wives, his sons, his daughters, and all the members of his household, his livestock, all his beasts, and all his property that he had acquired in the land of Canaan. He went into a land away from his brother Jacob. Esau's twin brother, Jacob, fled his home in fear, Genesis 27 verse 42, thanks to Esau's rage at being cheated out of his firstborn blessing, Genesis 27 verses 30-35. They seem to have reconciled peacefully many years later, Genesis 33 verses 1-4. However, the 2 men are both leaders of large tribes, and must separate so the land can support them both, Genesis 36 verse 7. His chosen location is southeast of the promised land which was promised to Jacob, Genesis 35 verse 12. When Esau was born, he was notably red and hairy, Genesis 25 verse 25. Later, he famously sold his birthright for some red stew, Genesis 25 verse 30. This earned him the name Edom, meaning red, and the country where his descendants settled was ironically called Seir, meaning shaggy or hairy, Genesis 36 verse 8. This land was already inhabited, Genesis 14 verse 6, but Esau's tribes took over, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12. In time, the 2 nations founded by these brothers will become bitter enemies. Jacob's descendants are known by his new name, Israel, Genesis 35 verse 10. Esau's are known by his nickname, Edom. Israelites and Edomites will clash frequently in the Old Testament, Numbers 20:14-21, 1 Samuel 14 verse 47, 2 Kings 8 verse 20, Obadiah 1 verses 8-11. Verse 7. For their possessions were too great for them to dwell together. The land of their sojournings could not support them because of their livestock. Esau has moved his family, his servants, and all that he owns away from Jacob and outside of the land of promise, Genesis 36 verse 8. The two brothers were once so opposed that Jacob fled to avoid being murdered, Genesis 27 verse 42. Later, they seem to have reconciled, Genesis 33 verses 1 to 4. The reason for this separation is simply population. Between them, Jacob and Esau owned too much livestock for the land to support both tribes living in proximity. This echoes the reason given for Abraham and Lot parting ways earlier in Genesis, Genesis 13 verses 8 to 13. Seir is already inhabited by the Horites, Genesis 14 verse 6, whom Esau's tribes will overcome, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12. The descendants of Esau will become known as the nation of Edom, Genesis 25 verse 30, 36:1. Jacob's sons will father the tribes of Israel, Genesis 35 verse 10. The Old Testament records many incidents of strife between these nations, as they grow to become vehement enemies, Numbers 20:14-21, 1 Samuel 14 verse 47, 2 Kings 8 verse 20, Obadiah 1 verses 8 to 11. Verse 8. So Esau settled in the hill country of Seir. Esau is Edom. Scripture makes a point of reminding the reader that the nation of Edom is descended from Esau. This comes from a name Esau earned earlier in life, Genesis 25 verse 30. Esau is the twin brother of Jacob, the man later named Israel, Genesis 35 verse 10. Israelites and Edomites will come to hate each other over the following centuries, Numbers 20:14-21, 1 Samuel 14 verse 47, 2 Kings 8 verse 20, Obadiah 1 verses 8 to 11. For now, however, the two men are separating for economic reasons. Esau has moved all that he owns away from Jacob and outside of the land of promise. Jacob and Esau own more livestock than the land can support. Esau settles his clan in the hill country of Seir to the east. This territory is roughly southeast of the Dead Sea. The soon-to-be nation of Edomites takes this territory from the Horites, Genesis 14 verse 6, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12. Verse 9. These are the generations of Esau the father of the Edomites in the hill country of Seir. This verse serves as a title for the remainder of the chapter. The sons, grandsons, and generations of Esau's people, the Edomites, will be listed along with some landmarks in their history. The name Edom means red, and comes from Esau's birth, Genesis 25 verse 25, and an incident with his brother, Jacob, Genesis 25 verse 30. Esau's body was notably hairy, Genesis 27 verse 11, so it's ironic that the country where he settles is referred to as Seir, meaning shaggy or hairy. The Edomites, children of Esau, will grow to become rivals of the Israelites, children of Jacob. Despite being brother nations, they will develop deep conflict, Numbers 20:14-21, 1 Samuel 14 verse 47, 2 Kings 8 verse 20, Obadiah 1 verses 8 to 11. A subgroup, the Amalekites, will become especially venomous enemies, Exodus 17 verses 8 and 16, Deuteronomy 25 verses 17 to 19, 1 Samuel 15 verses 2 to 3. Context summary: Genesis 36 verses 9 to 19 describes the family lines descending from Esau, who was also known as Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1. These are the important families who expanded after he moved his family from Canaan to Seir, Genesis 14 verse 6, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12. Verse 10. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz the son of Adah the wife of Esau, Ruel the son of Basemath the wife of Esau. This verse begins to expand on the genealogy which began this chapter, Genesis 36 verse 1. Eliphaz and Ruel were Esau's sons by his wives Adah and Basemath, respectively. The name Eliphaz means something like, the God El conquers, or perhaps, my God is Paz. Ruel means, friend of God, a name later used by Jacob's descendants. Verse 11. The sons of Eliphaz were Taman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. The genealogy of the Edomites, Genesis 36 verses 1 and 10, continues. Esau's son Eliphaz had sons by the names of Teman, meaning south, Omar, probably referring to eloquent, Zepho, or view, Gatam, which seems to mean thin, and Kenas, meaning hunter. The name Teman was later used for a region in Edom mentioned by both Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Jeremiah suggested that Teman became known as a place of wisdom, Jeremiah 49 verse 7. One of Job's comforters was named Eliphaz the Temanite, Job 2 verse 11. Verse 12. Timnah was a concubine of Eliphaz, Esau's son. She bore Amalek to Eliphaz. These are the sons of Adah, Esau's wife. The previous verse listed the sons of Esau's son Eliphaz, Genesis 36 verse 11. Now one more son is mentioned, this one born to him by a concubine named Timnah. The son's name is Amalek, which means, lives in the valley. The Amalekite people became one of Israel's worst enemies, Exodus 17 verses 8 and 16, Deuteronomy 25 verses 17 to 19, 1 Samuel 15 verses 2 to 3. Verse 13. These are the sons of Ruel, Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. These are the sons of Basemath, Esau's wife. After listing the sons and grandsons of Esau by his wife Adah, Genesis 36 verses 10 to 12, this verse lists his sons and grandsons with his wife Basemath. Her son Ruel sired Nahath, meaning pure or rest, Zerah, or God has shown, Shammah, translated as God has heard, and Mizah, whose name means fear. These are part of the nation of Edomites, a culture that would clash with the descendants of Esau's twin brother, the Israelites, throughout the Old Testament, Numbers 20:14-21, 1 Samuel 14 verse 47, 2 Kings 8 verse 20, Obadiah 1 verses 8 to 11. Verse 14. These are the sons of Oholibamah the daughter of Anna the daughter of Zibeon, Esau's wife. She bore to Esau Jush, Jalam, and Korah. Previous verses listed Esau's sons and grandsons by two of his wives, Genesis 36 verses 11 to 13. This verse once more lists his sons by his wife Oholibamah, Genesis 36 verse 5. Those sons include Jush, Jalam, and Korah. They are part of the growing nation of Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1, situated in the land of Seir, Genesis 36 verse 8. Verse 15. These are the chiefs of the sons of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz the firstborn of Esau, the chiefs Teman, Omar, Zepho, Kenas. This begins a section, Genesis 36 verses 16 to 19, listing the chiefs of the sons of Esau. This is the same as the record given in the previous verses, Genesis 36 verses 9 to 14, as Esau's sons and grandsons by his three wives. Chiefs may generally refer to leaders among the Edomite people or the heads of the clans. These chiefs include the sons of Esau's firstborn son Eliphaz, Teman, Omar, Zepho, and Kenas. Verse 16. Korah, Gatam, and Amalek, these are the chiefs of Eliphaz in the land of Edom, these are the sons of Adah. In this passage, Genesis lists the names of the chiefs from among the sons and grandsons of Esau. The list includes most of the names already given in the previous verses. Those records noted Esau's sons and grandsons according to which of his wives they were born, Genesis 36 verses 9 to 14. These chiefs are likely tribal leaders of Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1. They include Eliphaz's sons Teman, Omar, Zepho, Kenas, and now Korah, Gatam, and Amalek. Of these, Korah was previously said to be the son of Oholibamah. This may be a second Korah previously unmentioned. The people of Amalek, the Amalekites, would come to be one of Israel's most vicious enemies, Exodus 17 verses 8 and 16, Deuteronomy 25 verses 17 to 19, 1 Samuel 15 verses 2 to 3. Verse 17. These are the sons of Ruel, Esau's son, the chiefs Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. These are the chiefs of Ruel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Basemath, Esau's wife. This is part of a list noting the chiefs among the sons and grandsons of Esau. This includes most of the names already given, Genesis 36 verses 9 to 14, when listing Esau's sons and grandsons according to their birth mothers. These chiefs are probably tribal leaders of Edom. They include Ruel's sons Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. Verse 18. These are the sons of Oholibamah, Esau's wife, the chiefs Jush, Jalem, and Korah. These are the chiefs born of Oholibamah the daughter of Anna, Esau's wife. Previous verses listed the names of Esau's sons and grandsons, Genesis 36 verses 9 to 14. The earlier list was arranged according to birth mothers. This is part of a segment repeating those names as chiefs of Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1. These chiefs appear to be major leaders among the Edomites. They include the sons of Esau's wife Oholibamah, Jush, Jalem, and Korah. The name Korah is listed under two of Esau's wives. It's possible each had a son by the same name. Verse 19. These are the sons of Esau, that is, Edom, and these are their chiefs. This summarizes a section of verses listing Esau's sons and grandsons as chiefs of the Edomite people, Genesis 36 verses 15 to 18. Genesis repeatedly emphasizes that Esau is Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1. Esau is the twin brother of Jacob, Genesis 25 verses 24 to 26, who would later be known as Israel, Genesis 35 verse 10. Esau is associated with the word Edom, meaning red, partly due to his birth, but also because of an unfortunate incident with his twin, Genesis 25 verses 29 to 34. The Edomites would come to be bitter enemies of Israelites, Numbers 20:14-21, 1 Samuel 14 verse 47, 2 Kings 8 verse 20, Obadiah 1 verses 8 to 11. Verse 20. These are the sons of Seir the Horite, the inhabitants of the land, Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anna. Esau moved his large family to the hill country of Seir, Genesis 36 verses 7 to 8. At the time, Seir was already occupied by the Horite people. This is the same group noted in Genesis 14 verse 6 when Abraham was forced to rescue his nephew, Lot, Genesis 14 verses 12 to 16. Deuteronomy 2 verse 12 says, "The Horites also lived in Seir formerly, but the people of Esau dispossessed them and destroyed them from before them and settled in their place." Seir, for whom the region is named, had many sons, including Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, and Anna. The name Seir is ironic, in that it means hairy, and the man whose family conquered that territory was infamously shaggy, himself, Genesis 27 verse 11. Context summary: Genesis 36 verses 20 to 30 describes the people Esau and his offspring defeated to take control of their homeland, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12. These are the Horites, Genesis 14 verse 6, descended from a man named Seir. After Esau's conquest, the region became known as Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1. Verse 21. Dishon, Ezer, and Dishon, these are the chiefs of the Horites, the sons of Seir in the land of Edom. This section of verses, Genesis 36 verses 20 to 30, lists the descendants of Seir the Horite. The Horites were the original peoples of the land, Genesis 14 verse 6, that came to be occupied by Esau and his descendants, Genesis 36 verses 6 to 8. Seir's sons included Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anna, and now Dishon, Ezer, and Dishon. These sons of Seir are also referred to as chiefs of the Horite people, just as the sons and grandsons of Esau were described as chiefs of the Edomite people in the previous verses, Genesis 36 verses 15 to 19. Verse 22. The sons of Lotan were Hori and Hemam, and Lotan's sister was Timnah. The Horites were the original peoples of the land, Genesis 14 verse 6, that was later conquered by Esau and his descendants, Genesis 36 verses 6-8. The territory was initially called Seir, after the patriarch of that group, Genesis 36 verse 20. This name is partly ironic. Though the territory would later be called Edom, after a nickname given to Esau, Genesis 25 verse 30, Esau was also famously hairy, Genesis 27 verse 11. The word Seir literally means shaggy. Seir's son Lotan fathered Hori and Hemam. Lotan was also brother to Timnah. Timnah was mentioned in verse 12 as a concubine of Esau's son Eliphaz and the mother of Amalek. The Amalekites would become one of Israel's most vicious enemies, Exodus 17 verses 8 and 16, Deuteronomy 25 verses 17-19, 1 Samuel 15 verses 2-3. Verse 23. These are the sons of Shobal, Alvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. The descendants of Seir the Horite are listed in this section, Genesis 36 verses 20-30. The Horites were the original peoples of the territory, Genesis 14 verse 6, which would be conquered and occupied by Esau and his descendants. This nation would be known as Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1, and the Edomites would become enemies of Israel, Numbers 20:14-21, 1 Samuel 14 verse 47, 2 Kings 8 verse 20, Obadiah 1 verses 8-11. Seir's son Shobal fathered Alvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. Verse 24. These are the sons of Zibeon, Aiah and Anna. He is the Anna who found the hot springs in the wilderness, as he pastured the donkeys of Zibeon his father. This part of Genesis records the descendants of Seir the Horite, Genesis 36 verses 20-30. The Horites had lived in this territory since before the time of Abraham, Genesis 14 verse 6. This territory would be conquered and settled by Esau and his descendants, Genesis 36 verses 6-8. While the nation would be called Edom, or the Edomites, Genesis 36 verse 1, the land was still called Seir. Seir's son Zibeon fathered Aiah and Anna. More than one Anna has been mentioned in this chapter, Genesis 36 verses 2 and 20. Genesis specifies which this is according to an accomplishment. He found hot springs in the wilderness while caring for his father's donkeys. Finding a new source of water in the wilderness would be a valuable accomplishment, indeed. Verse 25. These are the children of Anna, Dishon and Oholibamah the daughter of Anna. The Horites, Genesis 36 verses 20-30, were the original inhabitants of Seir, Genesis 14 verse 6, a land that came to be occupied by Esau and his descendants, Genesis 36 verses 6-8. The family lines of the man the region was named after are listed here. Seir's son Anna, Genesis 36 verse 20, is to be distinguished from his nephew Anna, son to this Anna's brother Zibeon mentioned in the previous verse, Genesis 36 verse 24. This Anna fathered Dishon and a daughter named Oholibamah, who became one of Esau's wives, Genesis 36 verse 2. Verse 26. These are the sons of Dishon, Hemdan, Eshban, Ithran, and Cheran. Prior to the time of Abraham, the region known as Seir was inhabited, Genesis 36 verses 20-30, by a people called Horites, Genesis 14 verse 6. Esau's family will conquer this area, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12, settling there and establishing the nation of Edom, Genesis 36 verses 6-8. Seir's son Dishon shares a name with his nephew mentioned in the previous verse, Genesis 36 verse 25. This Dishon fathered Hemdan, Eshban, Ithran, and Cheran. Verse 27. These are the sons of Ezer, Bilhan, Zavan, and Akan. Seir the Horite is the patriarch of a group of people living in this territory, Genesis 36 verses 20-30. The Horites, Genesis 14 verse 6, were the original peoples living here, as far back as the time of Abraham. Their land will be conquered, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12, and occupied by Esau's family, later known as the Edomites, Genesis 36 verses 6-8. Seir's son Ezer fathered Bilhan, Zavan, and Akan. Verse 28. These are the sons of Dishan, Uzi and Aaron. When Esau and his descendants, the Edomites, moved into the land of Seir, Genesis 36 verses 6-8, it was already occupied by the Horites, Genesis 14 verse 6. Through conquest, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12, Edom would take over and live in that land for centuries to come. Seir's son Dishan fathered Uzi and Aaron. He should not be confused with Dishan, Genesis 36 verses 25-26, 30-31. Verse 29. These are the chiefs of the Horites, the chiefs Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anna. The Horites originally occupied the region of Seir, named for the patriarch of their people, Genesis 14 verse 6. They were overrun, but not wiped out, by Esau and his descendants, Genesis 36 verses 6-8, when they moved to the area, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12. This and the following verse, Genesis 36 verse 30, list the tribal leaders of the Horites. This is simply a list of Seir's previously mentioned sons, including Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, and Anna, Genesis 36 verse 20. Verse 30. Dishan, Ezer, and Dishan, these are the chiefs of the Horites, chief by chief in the land of Seir. As far back as the time of Abraham, the Horites occupied the region of Seir, named for their patriarch, Genesis 14 verse 6. They were conquered by Esau and his descendants, Genesis 36 verses 6-8, when they moved to the region, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12. Along with the previous verse, this lists chiefs, probably meaning tribal leaders, of the Horites. This repeats Seir's previously mentioned sons, including Dishan, Ezer, and Dishan, Genesis 36 verse 21. Verse 31. These are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom, before any king reigned over the Israelites. This opens a passage listing those who ruled over Edom during a specific era, the years before Israel had any kings. It's unclear whether this era extended right up to the time of Israel's first king, 1 Samuel 8 verses 4-5, or if it happened much earlier. Esau, Genesis 36 verse 1, and his family conquered the land of Seir, Genesis 14 verse 6, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12. His twin brother, Jacob, was renamed Israel, Genesis 35 verse 10, but his descendants will not arrive in the promised land for several centuries, Exodus 1 verses 1-5, 1240, after which time they will be ruled by judges, not kings, Judges 21 verse 25. Context summary: Genesis 36 verses 31-43 lists 8 kings of Edom, the nation which descended from Esau, Genesis 36 verse 1, all apparently ruling from a different city. This passage pointedly notes that Edom's kings all reigned before Israel had kings of her own. While Edom is conquering Seir, Genesis 36 verse 9, Israel must endure centuries of slavery, Exodus 12 verse 40. This was followed by a long period under a series of judges, Judges 21 verse 25, before their first appointed king, 1 Samuel 8 verses 4-5. Finally, in this section, the clan leaders are listed, each likely representing a specific region in the land of Edom. Verse 32. Bela the son of Beer reigned in Edom, the name of his city being Dinhabah. This section, Genesis 36 verse 31, lists the kings of Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1, during a time before Israel had monarchs of her own, Judges 21 verse 25. The first of Edom's kings listed is Bela, son of Beer, who reigned from the city of Dinhabah. Later, a man named Balaam, the son of Beer, will have dealings with the Israelites as described in Numbers 22. It's unclear if this Beer is the same mentioned there, though the era and geography may be correct. Verse 33. Bela died, and Jobab the son of Zerah of Bozrah reigned in his place. These verses, Genesis 36 verse 31, describes the kings of Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1, during the era before Israel had kings, Judges 21 verse 25. After the death of Bela, the first king listed, Genesis 36 verse 32, Jobab, son of Zerah, assumed the throne and ruled from Bozrah, a city well known in Israel's history, Isaiah 34 verse 6, Amos 1 verse 12. Verse 34. Jobab died, and Husham of the land of the Temanites reigned in his place. This section of verses lists the kings of Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1, during a time before Israel had kings of her own, Judges 21 verse 25. After the death of King Jobab, Husham became king, ruling from the land of the Temanites. The region of Teman apparently got its name from one of the sons of Esau's son Eliphaz, Genesis 36 verse 11. Verse 35. Husham died, and Hadad the son of Bedad, who defeated Midian in the country of Moab, reigned in his place, the name of his city being Avith. This section of verses lists the kings of Edom during a time before Israel had kings of her own. After the death of Husham, Hadad, son of Bedad, took the throne. He reigned from the city of Avith. Hadad was known for his military victory over Midian in the country of Moab. Later, the Israelites would also win a remarkable victory over the Midianites, Judges 7. Meanwhile, Midianite traders will be the ones to buy and sell Joseph, a son of Jacob, from his brothers, Genesis 37 verses 28 and 36. The Midianites will also plague Israel after they leave Egypt, Exodus 12 verse 40, Numbers 25:16-18. Verse 36. Hadad died, and Samlah of Masrekah reigned in his place. This passage, Genesis 36 verse 31, describes the kings who ruled over Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1. Notably, these rulers controlled their land in an era before Israel had any kings, at all. As Esau's descendants are conquering Seir, Genesis 14 verse 6, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12, Jacob's family will be enslaved in Egypt for centuries, Exodus 12 verse 40, and even when freed will not immediately appoint a king, Judges 21 verse 25. Hadad, Genesis 36 verse 35, died, and Samlah took over as king, ruling from the city of Masrekah. Verse 37. Samlah died, and Shaul of Rehoboth on the Euphrates reigned in his place. Kings ruled the land of Edom, Genesis 14 verse 6, 36 verses 1 and 31, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12, before Israel had appointed their first king, Judges 21 verse 25. This is partly due to Israel's centuries-long captivity in Egypt, Exodus 12 verse 40. After the death of Samlah, Shaul became king, ruling from Rehoboth, a city on the Euphrates River. The name translated as Shaul is the same name as Saul, though this is not the same person as the first of Israel's kings, 1 Samuel 8 verses 4-5, 11:14-15. Verse 38. Shaul died, and Baal-Hanan the son of Achbor reigned in his place. Edom is the nation which came from Esau, Genesis 36 verse 1. Their people took over the country of Seir, Genesis 36 verses 6-8, conquering it from the Horites, Genesis 14 verse 6, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12. During this period, the nation which came from Esau's twin brother, Israel, Genesis 35 verse 10, spent centuries enslaved, Exodus 12 verse 40. Even after they were freed, it was many years before Israel had a king, Judges 21 verse 25, 1 Samuel 8 verse 45. After the death of King Shaul, Genesis 36 verse 37, Baal-Hanan took the throne. His name means Baal is gracious, an overt reference to the main idol of the Canaanites. Scripture provides no details about his father, or why he was given the name Achbor, literally meaning mouse. For the first time in this list, no city name is given along with the king. Verse 39. Baal-Hanan the son of Achbor died, and Hadar reigned in his place, the name of his city being Pau. His wife's name was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred, daughter of Mezahab. In this part of Genesis, Genesis 36 verse 31, kings of Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1, are listed, from a time before Israel, Genesis 35 verse 10, had their first king. Following the death of Baal-Hanna, Genesis 36 verse 38, the final king in this list took the throne of Edom, ruling from the city of Pau, also spelled as Pi, 1 Chronicles 1 verse 50. King Hadar was married to Mehetabel, whose name means, favored of God. She was the daughter of Matred, daughter of Mezahab. It's unknown precisely why this detail is included. It is noteworthy that the prior king's name is an explicit reference to Baal, the false god of the Canaanites, while this king's wife bears a name more aligned with belief in the God of Israel. Verse 40. These are the names of the chiefs of Esau, according to their clans and their dwelling places, by their names, the chiefs Timnah, Alva, Jetheth. This final section of the chapter lists the chiefs of Esau in the region of Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1. This list differs both from the list of the sons of Esau, Genesis 36 verses 9 to 14, and of the kings of Edom, Genesis 36 verses 31 to 39. It's possible these names came to represent specific clans and geographical regions of Edom. The chiefs of Esau included Timnah, Alva, and Jetheth. Verse 41. Oholibamah, Elah, Pinion. Chapter 36 ends with a collection of names, the chiefs of Esau, Genesis 36 verse 40, in the region of Edom, Genesis 36 verses 1 to 8. This list differs both from the list of the sons of Esau, Genesis 36 verses 9 to 14, and of the kings of Edom, Genesis 36 verses 31 to 39. These may have been the names of secondary lords, or captains, and they eventually became associated with certain regions within Edom. The chiefs listed here included Timnah, Alva, Jetheth, Genesis 36 verse 40, and now Oholibamah, Elah, and Pinion. Oholibamah's name is an interesting inclusion, as this is also the name of one of Esau's wives, Genesis 36 verse 2. Verse 42. Kenas, Taman, Mibzar. After listing the sons of Esau, Genesis 36 verses 9 to 14, and the kings of Edom, Genesis 36 verses 31 to 39, the chapter ends with a list of chiefs, Genesis 36 verse 40. These names may be those of important leaders, other than kings, or even the titles given to certain clans or geographical regions of Edom. Taman is referenced as a regional term later in the Bible, Amos 1 verse 12, Obadiah 1 verse 9, Habakkuk 3 verse 3. The chiefs of Esau included Timnah, Alva, Jetheth, Genesis 36 verse 40, Oholibamah, Elah, Pinion, Genesis 36 verse 41, and now Kenas, Taman, and Mibzar. Verse 43. Magdiel, and Aram, these are the chiefs of Edom, that is, Esau, the father of Edom, according to their dwelling places in the land of their possession. This final section of the chapter lists important names in the region of Edom, Genesis 36 verse 1, after recounting the sons, Genesis 36 verses 9 to 14, and kings, Genesis 36 verses 31 to 39, who came from Esau's line. It's possible these names were used as regional titles, or they may have been names of specific clans. The chiefs of Esau included Timnah, Alva, Jetheth, Genesis 36 verse 40, Oholibamah, Elah, Pinion, Genesis 36 verse 41, Kenas, Taman, Mibzar, Genesis 36 verse 42, and now Magdiel and Aram. This verse sums up that these are, indeed, the chiefs of Esau, father of Edom, Genesis 36 verses 6 to 8. They led their people in the land of their possession. Isaac had prophesied this about Esau after Jacob stole from him the family blessing, "By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother, but when you grow restless you shall break his yoke from your neck," Genesis 27 verse 40. Esau's move to the region of Seir, Genesis 36 verses 6-8, and the possession of Edom by his descendants, Deuteronomy 2 verse 12, is a fulfillment of that blessing of independence and self-rule. End of chapter 36. Please note: the material use in this video is from BibleRef.com, which is from Got Questions Ministries and is posted here to be read by immersive reader in the Edge browser. If you copy this material, please follow these rules. Content from BibleRef.com may not be used for any commercial purposes, or as part of any commercial work, without explicit prior written consent from Got Questions Ministries. Any use of our material should be properly credited. Please make it clear the content is from BibleRef.com. BibleRef.com content may not be altered, modified, or otherwise changed unless such changes are specifically noted.